Today. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Welcome to breakout session number 3, Radiate Confidence, Empowering Women Through Poise and Public Speaking. It is my pleasure to introduce our sponsor speaker today. This session is sponsored by the NEPA Alliance, the Apex Accelerator Division, and Christy Miller is here to talk to us, and she's a business finance specialist with the NEPA Alliance. So Christy, welcome. And before Christy speaks, I do want to just do a quick few housekeeping rules. Sorry. Please silence your cell phones, number 1. Exits are to the rear, to the side, and to the front. Restrooms are right out here. And this session is being recorded, so we have it to play back later on. And if you have any questions, please place it in the Whova app, because we will do those at the end. So Christy, welcome.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Christy Miller, and I'm with the Northeastern Pennsylvania Alliance. We're an economic development agency located in Pittston, Pennsylvania, that services a 7-county region through business finance, international exporting, and government contracting. Our government contracting sector, the Apex Accelerator, is a proud sponsor of today's event, and I am honored to present today's panelist session, Radiate Confidence, Empowering Women Through Poise and Public Speaking.
Thank you. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Mandie Hendricks. I am a wealth management financial advisor at Janney Montgomery Scott in Wilkes-Barre. Can everyone hear me okay? All right, great. Throughout my career, I've made it my personal mission to become a better public speaker by constantly putting myself out there and volunteering for public speaking engagements. I'm thankful for everyone who's ever trusted me with a microphone, especially the Chamber for allowing me and giving me the opportunity to be a speaker last year and this year a moderator. Public speaking is something that's very important for many women's careers, and it's something that's extremely nerve-wracking and can also be outright debilitating at times. So today our objective is to have a discussion and find out how these women became such amazing public speakers, and also learn some tips that we can use to have more confidence and poise when it comes to public speaking. So I want to make sure that we have plenty of time for questions and discussion. So can each panelist, in 60 seconds or less, briefly introduce themselves and give a little bit of your background in public speaking and leadership. Should we start with Senator Brown?
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Senator Rosemary Brown, and I was a state representative for 12 years prior to being a senator for now Monroe County, parts of Lackawanna, and parts of Wayne County. And as you can imagine, public speaking and being in front of the public is a very large part of my job, representing many of you. So I look forward to sharing how I function each and every day in my position. Thank you.
Thank you. And Brianna?
Hi, everyone. My name is Brianna Strunk. I'm the Public Relations Officer of the Pocono Mountains Visitors Bureau. We also have a unique travel channel called the Pocono Television Network. I'm a senior correspondent for that. We have a monthly show that airs across the tri-state called Pocono Mountains Magazine, a reporter for that as well. Prior to joining the Visitors Bureau in 2019, I was the Pocono reporter and weekend morning anchor for WBRE and WYOU, which is based in Wilkes-Barre. I still fill in anchoring on occasion and hosting their lifestyle show, PA Live. So always used to being in front of a crowd. It still does get a little nerve-wracking. It's easier to look into a camera versus a live audience, but it's just something that comes with the job, and I'm glad to be here today with all of you.
Thank you. And Dr. Richard Service, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. Thanks for coming to our session. I'm Tricia Richard Service. I have been a speaker and an event planner and an instructor of public speaking for more than 20 years. I have an adjunct faculty appointment at Temple University's Klein College of Media and Communication, and I'm the founder and owner of I Need a Speaker, which is an online platform that connects qualified speakers at all price points with the people who want to book them. We have users in 17 countries, and we also do public speaking training and branding services for our speakers.
Great, thank you so much, ladies. So Brianna, you said that you're more comfortable on the camera, which boggles my mind because when I get on camera, it's even worse. So with your background in television and reporting, I wanted to ask you, like whenever I watch you on PA Live, you're very poised and you're very intentional with your body movements. Can you give us some tips how to look more poised and be more self-assured with our body when we are public speaking?
Yeah, I think a lot of it comes with practice, but you don't want to over-practice. You want to be knowledgeable in what you're talking about. So if I'm interviewing somebody, I'm doing research in advance to see what they're about and some of the questions I want to ask. Maybe go into it with a few bullet points of high-level topics that I want to cover and talk about, but not really over-planning, not writing a script, because you want to leave room in case things don't go as planned. You don't want something to throw you off and, it just ruins everything for you. So I think it's important to be prepared, but not over-prepared. Even when I'm getting ready to do a live shot for the Pocono Television Network or anchor a newscast, I still do get nerves about it, and I do find that taking a few minutes to myself beforehand and just taking a deep breath and really getting centered and ready for what's to come is really important. And remembering that, people aren't watching or listening because of what you look like or what you sound like. They're there for your message. So to focus on that, and also just thinking about it like you're in a room full of people who want to hear your message, and a friend or a coworker, just talking conversationally to everybody, no matter how big the audience is.
Great, thank you so much. Senator Brown or Dr. Richard Service, do you want to add anything about poise or, being intentional with your body movements that you do when you do public speaking engagements?
I'll start with that. I'll demonstrate this. There's a pose we call the fig leaf pose.
Oh, yes, I'm very familiar with that.
It's self-explanatory. And you want to avoid looking stiff and nervous. You have a message that people want to hear. And what you have to remember is that your audience also is supporting you and cheering for you. They want you to do well. They want to have a good experience with you. Remember that you are the subject matter expert, that it's okay to gesture naturally. You don't want to be crazy about it, of course, but you want to talk as though you were speaking comfortably in front of people you know and trust. And a lot of people will say, well, I'm not a public speaker, I don't have to worry about these things. But every time you speak at a department meeting, or you coach a team, or you get in front of a PTA group or a sales presentation, you are a public speaker. So I hope that these tips will carry over to you in your personal and professional lives in a meaningful way.
Absolutely. I think they both did a great job, and Brianna has interviewed me several times, and she is always very prepared, but again, prepared in the way where it's natural and she can go with the flow of conversation, because she also has to listen to the answers. She has to be prepared and ask the questions, but she has to listen to the answer to then know what her next step is. So that adds a whole nother dimension into what she does with the camera versus public speaking. But you ever hear that phrase, be you because everyone else is taken? That is how I strive to be, because there is no way that you can get on stage, you can get in front of any group and be someone else. Hi, Teresa. And be someone else. And it will show. It will show if you are trying to be something that you're not. And you, again, I think Brianna made a great point. You have to remember why the audience is there. If you take that focus away too much on you or how you're going to perform, you lose that relevance of the message and what you're providing. Why did you guys all come into this room? You want to learn something. You want to walk away with something that you didn't come in here with, whether it's 2 or 3 pointers that you can remember, that you'll always remember. So you have to remember what message you're giving, and you want people to want more. You want them the next time to say, I'm going back to that public speaking session at the Empower event, because last year I learned 2 things that were so helpful, and I'm going back. And for me, as a legislator, I could throw so much into a speech, right? But sometimes we call that data dumping. It's too much. It's too much. And then it's like, what did I learn from that message? So my message is always, I want you to want to hear me again. I want you to say, oh, Rosemary's going to speak. I'm going to learn something from Rosemary. So I want to hear what she has to say.
Always keep them coming back for more. That's the way to do it. Senator Brown, I saw you last year address the entire conference, which was over 800 people, and you did amazing. So how do you command the crowd, a crowd like this, a crowd of 800, and also deal with an audience that has opposing beliefs, which I'm sure you come across a lot of the time being involved in politics?
Right. Well, I think in this world, it's a little crazy. But one of my points that I said last year was I firmly believe you can control your own actions. And sometimes, unfortunately, we can't control the actions of others, but we can help maybe guide or be an example to others. And so even with differing views, I think, again, the old phrase of what you say and how you say it still stands true. It still stands true. You can be very honest about what you believe or what you feel would be the best direction to go and know why. And you have to communicate both of those. You have to communicate the message and maybe the policy on my end, and then the why. But you have to be respectful in your message. You have to be respectful and thoughtful and kind. And I also left that message last year that I continuously say, there's a very big difference between strong and nasty. You do not have to be nasty to be strong. And I think I said it twice, right? Mm-hmm. You do not have to be nasty to be strong. And don't let anyone tell you that that's a necessity.
Mm-hmm. That's a great message and something I think we can all use and always remember. Mm-hmm. Brianna, I wanted to ask you, confidence is key when you're on TV, when you're doing a public speaking engagement. How do you build, but then also maintain your confidence throughout your speaking engagement, or if you're interviewing someone?
I just think, again, knowing that people are there for your message, taking deep breaths beforehand are all really important. And something that, obviously, being a former news reporter has always been instilled in me is telling a story. And I think Rosemary hit on it a little bit. You can give a presentation to coworkers, to a group of students, to a big crowd of people like we see the keynote speakers, and you can give a whole bunch of facts and figures and numbers, but that's really not what people are going to walk away remembering. They're going to walk away remembering the story. So giving examples of success stories for clients, of people who have used your business that have been helped, and people are going to resonate with that human element and remember that when they leave. So interjecting either success stories of your own or of someone who your business or organization has helped, I think are always really important, and honing in on the message that way.
Yes, definitely. I agree with sharing stories because it's a way that you can relate to your audience. Tricia, I wanted to ask you, if you don't know, Tricia, she is not only a public speaker, she also teaches public speaking and communications, and she hires public speakers for events. So she has a wealth of knowledge on this subject. And I know we said we wanted some key takeaways, so I have some specific questions. Are there any phrases that you would recommend avoiding when public speaking?
How much time do we have? Yes.
I say
We did a run through with Mandie last week, and she got to hear my entire soapbox rant. But what I like when people avoid is any gendered language. I don't want people to call me you guys. I'm not a guy. I don't want to hear that. I don't want to hear so yeah as a conclusion. I don't want to hear needless to say, because if it's needless to say, then don't say it. Right? So there are some phrases that really don't have a place in what we're talking about. It's really sharing your message in a way that is relatable and inclusive. right? If you're delivering a message and you're sharing with a group of women like they're here, don't assume everyone's a parent. Don't assume anything about everyone. Be inclusive in your comments. Be relatable in what you're saying. So try to avoid anything that's stereotypical, because that can be very offensive. Try to avoid that gendered language. Try to avoid making assumptions about your audience. If you don't know your audience well before you step in, ask questions or find out from someone who does, so that everyone can find a message that they can carry away from that talk.
Great, thank you. This can be for anyone, or if you want to answer it, but do you recommend using note cards when giving a presentation?
They're both looking at me.
I mean, you're the instructor, so.
I'll say this. Some people have said to me, I know PowerPoint, I'm a speaker. And I say PowerPoint is a tool, it's not speaking, that's not the same thing. It's a resource and a tool to use. So I recommend, if you are going to use slides, keep them very simple, very impactful. Use them as a note card to kind of push you over to the next point, remind you of what your next point is going to be. If you are not in a position to have slides, it's okay to have note cards. Not 8.5 by 11 sheets, which I've seen recently, but note cards. And my trick used to be that if I had to carry a note card, I would take a highlighting pen and highlight every other line, maybe even in a different color. So if I had to look back down and glance, I knew that I left off at the pink line or the yellow line, and it would take my eye right where it had to go. So the important thing is know your material, practice the material. If you do need a prompt to move you to the next point, absolutely do that. But don't focus on that. Focus on the audience and the message. And that's when we come back to practice, again, as a recommendation. I hope that was helpful.
Oh, great, yeah, no, that's
Good.
wonderful. My pet peeve is when people are on their phone and they use that as notes. I feel like that's very distracting. I would get a text and then I'd answer that and forget I'm speaking in front of people. So I say note cards, definitely.
Or your battery goes dead.
Yeah,
right?
something like that. Senator Brown, crafting a speech for a group of people, you want it to have substance, but you also want it to have style. When you're writing a speech or putting together a presentation, how do you make sure that it resonates with your audience?
Well, again, I think you really need to know as best as you can the audience and who they are and why they are coming to hear you speak. And you have to be careful, again, to put in a certain amount of information, but not too much that it becomes overwhelming. And I think especially there are people with politics that are gurus and everything is political. They follow everything political. And then there are people that watch the news and see certain pieces of politics, and then there's sort of people in between. And so I can never assume that the audience knows the exact subject matter I might bring up. I never can assume that they have full knowledge of it. They even have this much knowledge of it. And my job is to be in this world and to be able to communicate whatever is happening so I can help you know what's happening down in Harrisburg. That's part of my job, to know what's being voted on and to know what's happening. But I think with what I have found over the years is keeping the attention of an audience in a political speech. It becomes very, very difficult. And as was stated before, varying views, you have to be aware of that as well. But what I feel is extremely important is the honesty to the comments and to the speech. I can't tell you how many times that I have heard colleagues or fellow politicians speak on a manner in one way and then walk out of the room and say something completely different to a different audience. And I think crafting it is crafting the facts, but then it's crafting transparency and honesty, because that, you become a reputable speaker. You become a reputable person. And I think that transfers over to any industry. Because if you say one thing here and then you say one thing here, what happened? That's not really a reputable speaker or someone that stays consistent. So I think the facts, but also being, again, true to who you are and relating to the audience that the best you can without being too heavy. Even with a heavy, heavy subject, you have to remember people like to laugh. People like to laugh. They like to not be slide after slide after slide. They could read the slides. They don't need you to read the slide, you know? And how often you get a pamphlet and somebody just goes through the pamphlet and reads it. So I could do this on my own. So it's a tricky question, but again, I think it comes down to making sure that you add your personality to your information. Without your personality, without your demeanor and your way, the information sort of gets very stagnant.
Great. Thank you. Was that a male politician who said one thing and then said something else to another group of women? Just kidding.
Yeah, I'm going to have to pass on that one.
Good choice, good choice. So I wanted to ask you, Brianna, public speaking takes place in many different settings, and I've seen you on the news, you know, in a news station. I've also seen you on location. So how do you adapt, you know, your public speaking, your interviewing to different locations and different styles and different people that you're dealing with?
Well, I'll kind of answer that question a little differently because in any setting, I personally try to look at it the same, that I'm just talking to people who want to hear the message. That also helps my anxiety and my nerves as well. But just talking to people who like are friends or coworkers, we're all the same, we're all equals, we all have different messages to share. I think that helps me get through it, to be honest. So it's a little different answer to the question. But everyone up here has said adapting to your audience too. Unless you're talking to a group of colleagues who understand your industry in and out and know the jargon, it's really important to speak clearly, concisely, and to the point. You don't want to get stuck in nitty-gritty details because you don't want to start talking in a way that people can't follow you or they don't know what you're talking about. You don't want to lose them. You want to keep them engaged. So if I'm speaking to people that are outside of my industry, I really try to keep it high level to not lose them in the message at any point.
And this is just a personal question, but how do you get that reporter voice? Do they teach you that in school, or do you just get it? Like, it's something I've always wanted. But...
We're not supposed to have a reporter voice, and we're not supposed to have, like, the news hands, but I'm trying to lose
doing
it.
That
I'm trying
right
to lose it a little bit.
No, you sound great. You project your voice. You can hear it very clearly. I'm very, very jealous. I did a poll of the audience, and 66% of the respondents said that they do get anxiety when public speaking. Tricia, I know you're the exception. You do not get nervous when public speaking. But if you did, what are some rituals or some exercises that you would recommend people do, you know, right before they have to go on, or maybe weeks in advance for part of their preparation?
Well, thanks for calling out the outlier. That is true. That is true. My mom said that since I learned to speak, I've never stopped, and she regretted that. So many people have said that I was vaccinated with a phonograph needle. But I do get excited because of the energy that happens when there's an audience in front of a speaker. I think that's really great. But as I've taught over the years, I've also had students threaten to vomit, you know, saying, I can't stand this, I hate it, I'm nervous. They would pick their fingernails, they would dance around, you know, they would do that whole pirate ship sway thing when they were talking. And it clearly told me from a nonverbal standpoint they were nervous. So we talked about a grounding technique that I'd love to share with you. Choose something that you can do that no one will notice. Maybe some people, this is what I recommend, is just push two fingers together and just say, I'm calm when you're practicing. So when you're speaking, no one notices those fingers might be pushing together, but you're practicing a grounding technique that's going to bring you back to those calm states when you're just breathing in and out as you practice and saying, I know the material, I'm visualizing my success. I'm seeing people giving me nonverbal responses that say, yes, I'm with you, and yes, I'm engaged and following along with you. And if you get to a point where maybe you forget a little mention, a story, a detail that you wanted to share, and it starts to throw you off, go back to that grounding technique that no one else can see and no one knows is happening but you. And it's going to take you back to all those practice sessions that you were doing. I'm grounded, I've got this, I know the material, they want to hear it. Visualize your success and continue to do that. And when I recommend that to people, they say it does work. Just want to share a quick story. There's a student who came to me once, a non-traditional student, who had come back to school for her master's degree. And she walked in, and it was a public presentation course, I'm referencing, of course, and she was sitting in the back of the room, and as I called everyone up for that first night to introduce themselves, she did so with hesitance. At the end of the night, she asked to speak to me alone, and she said, "You seem really nice, but I'm never coming back. I hate this, I don't like it." And I said, "What happened to upset you tonight?" And she said, "I remember when I was in first grade, the teacher asked me to come to the board, and I didn't know the answer of what I had to write on the board, and the other kids laughed." And she said, "Maybe it's still in my head, maybe they didn't laugh that loud, but I remember, and I don't want that to happen again. I'm terrified." And I said, "Listen, I believe in you. I know that you can do this." I said, "Do an exercise with me." I said, "You know those awesome black boots you see sometimes in the store? Like, they're expensive, but they got the pointy toes, they've got a little bit of a heel, they're badass, black and sassy." And she says, "Yeah." I said, "I want to picture yourself wearing those black boots, zipping up those black boots and walking with confidence. And when you see self-doubt in the street, kick it to the side with one of those boots, because you got this." And she said, "You're really nice." She said, "I'm sorry that I'll never see you again." And I said, "Okay." So the next week, she comes back to class, and she sort of stomps in front of me. She walks in like this. And I said, "Well, hello, look who's back." And she said, "I'm back." And she stomped her foot again, and I said, "That's great, I like your attitude." She said, "Look down." And I looked down, and she had gone out and bought a pair of badass, pointy toe, high heel black boots, and she wore them every single night to class. She graduated with her master's. She got an A in my class. She was amazing. And she went on to run for public office in her county and won. And so she speaks now all the time. And I remember her all the time when I tell this story of how terrified she was. And she was sure she'd never see me again, and that could have happened. But part of that has to do with your own self-confidence and what you do outside of the time you're not speaking to build that confidence. Taking care of yourself, being sure of yourself, taking chances, going out of your comfort zone and realizing it's okay. So that's the advice I would give, is just imagine what makes you feel powerful and you feel successful, and visualize yourself conquering that room and leaving a positive, impactful impression on the audience.
That girl wasn't Senator Brown, was it?
No.
It could have been.
That would have been cool.
It could
That
have
would have been full circle.
I did a terrible job on my very first speech when I was running for office. So
I don't believe that.
Yeah,
but,
I really did.
That ties into the next question. Do you have any memorable speeches that left a lasting impact on you?
I do, and just to add on, and I'm thinking Tricia here is the coach and the trainer. Talk about making you nervous. I never feel that when I leave a room that I always say I should have done this or I should have done that. I'm very hard on myself. And that's a good thing for me because it works for me. But I have to say, you have to be very careful to not expect perfection from yourself. And it sounds a little corny, but it really is, I think, part of what holds back anyone from public speaking or from doing anything in front of audiences or in front of larger groups. Why do we have to be perfect? And even, unfortunately, I feel sometimes in politics, expect perfection, there's no such thing. You know, you're never going to love someone for everything. But I think we have to be careful of that, and I think that's what creates the nerves. I have to do perfect. I have to do everything right. I can't say anything completely wrong. And so that piece, I think, is something that follows me all the time, that I have learned. And I feel very confident that I'm not perfect. And I feel very confident that it's okay if I didn't do everything I wanted in a speech. I didn't do everything perfect. I just missed something. I'm okay. I'm okay. And I know that I'm trying to do my best. And part of that perfection that we put on ourselves is the fact that you want to do a good job. And so there's nothing wrong with wanting to do a great job. And so that has followed me through my speeches. But I will say the very first speech that I did when I decided to run for office, I was in management and I was in business, and I was announcing my candidacy. And it was in front of 275 people, and it was in Pike County, Pennsylvania. And I wrote the speech. It probably took me a day and a half to write the speech. And I thought it was fairly decent. But my husband said, "I'm going to come with you." I said, "No, you're not. You are not coming with me." And, standing up in front of 275 people, but also for the first time ever running for a public office, was terrifying for me. It really was. And I was a pretty confident person. But again, it was terrifying. I went and did the speech, but when I walked into the dinner to speak, it was a larger venue, and everybody was already seated inside. And there was a gentleman that met me in the front and said, "Who are you?" That's how I was greeted. So I went in nervous, and I went in, and that's how I was greeted. So now it was like a double negative for me. And the self-talk in my brain is going on and on and on. And I ended up speaking, and obviously I didn't do a great job, because after the event, I had people come up to me and say, "Oh, honey. Oh, honey." And, we have to do this. You have to do, everybody had their 2 cents. There was legislators that were in office at the time that I guess were talking in a circle outside of my circle, saying, "Oh, she did a terrible job. She did a terrible job. You like her? You like her? You think she's going to be okay? You think she's going to be good?" It was, I have to say, it helped me fight even harder. And I got better and better and better. And those people over time became my best advocates and people that supported me throughout my campaign. And till this day, they apologize to me every time they see me and say, "We are so sorry, Rosemary, that we did that to you." And I said, "You actually helped me. It was wonderful. And it was okay to not do a great job." I would have loved to have walked out and said, "She's fabulous right from day one, and we were good and everything was great." But it could have halted me. And I think that that's when you have to realize if something doesn't go how you plan it to go, even though I prepared, I have to get better. But I don't have to be perfect.
That's great, because we hold ourselves up to such high standards, and we all want perfection, and if it doesn't go exactly the way we want to, we focus on what we didn't do and not focus on all the good things that we did do. So that's a great lesson to take away from this. One of the questions that was submitted on the app, I really want to ask for any one of you: how do we maintain authenticity in a fake it till you make it world? Brianna, go ahead.
I think the word vulnerable is good. To be vulnerable, to share personal stories and experiences helps you gain rapport with your audience. The last speaking engagement I did, I said what I started here with, that it's a lot easier when you're in front of the camera and not a live audience. And I think it just kind of helped us all loosen up a little bit to show that you're a real person and you're vulnerable, and to share those real experiences. And also going back to the point of not being glued to a PowerPoint. A PowerPoint is great to give high-level information, short, sweet, to the point, maybe some visuals, play a video, show an impactful image, but you don't want to have too many words on the screen, because then you're busy looking at that PowerPoint and not looking at your audience and engaging with them and getting feedback from them. I always suggest starting small, maybe not practice makes perfect, but starting small. If you have the opportunity to speak to colleagues at an event, start small with that, or speak to a group of students at a school, or do something on a panel where you can feed off of other people, and then work your way up over time, and that'll give you confidence as well. But always just being vulnerable and remembering you're a person and everyone you're talking to are people as well.
That's great. Do any of the other panelists want to add anything on maintaining authenticity?
I'd like to add that it's okay to show emotion when you're giving a presentation. Now, again, the situation is going to change. If you're talking about your Midwest sales of toothpaste at a department meeting, at work, obviously you're not going to get choked up and cry of joy. But when you are being vulnerable, like Brianna talked about, and you are feeling judged, like Rosemary talked about, it's okay sometimes to start to feel your vulnerability and feel your very authentic self coming through. And so many people have apologized for saying, I told this personal story while I was talking and I got kind of teary-eyed and emotional. I don't know about you, but that makes me love them even more because they're real to me and they're telling a story that matters. I know one of our speakers mentioned Brene Brown earlier. I just love her. She's so adorable. And when she talks about, sinking into a bad mood with a beer and a banana nut muffin, I'm like, honey, we should hang out. Like, I really just think she gets me, And some people just think, well, I'm the speaker. I have to be perfect. Like, we've heard that. That's just a myth. I'm glad that was shattered today. And we think it has to be perfect and we have to know everything. You may ask, yourself, what do I need to do to practice? How much can I share? No matter what that scope is, you have a limited time with people. And there are things maybe you don't cover or maybe you don't know. That doesn't mean that you are less effective. So what you need to think about when you're approaching an audience is they're going to want answers to two questions. What's in it for me and why should I care? If you can answer those two questions in a human, authentic way and relate to everyone and be inclusive, gosh, you've done better than most people have. And that's a triumph. And it should be honored as such, and you should be proud of yourself for doing that, no matter what the environment or the topic is. So again, I love that you said to not try for perfection. Try to be the best version of you at that time. And your authentic self should come through. Let that personality shine through. Otherwise, we'll go to ChatGPT and, you lose that human element of it.
Yeah. Thank you so much. And I think that when someone asks you a question, it's okay to say, I don't know.
Absolutely.
I have to get back to you. I would much rather a professional, research it and give me the right answer instead of just making something up on the fly. And it's definitely okay to say, I don't know, and get back. Were you going to say something, Brianna? I'm sorry, I thought I heard something. I got the 5-minute mark, and I just went and checked the app for questions. There's 9 questions, so I'll try and get through them. Obviously, we have a very engaged audience, so thank you so much. One of the questions was, how do you control stumbling over your words? Any advice for being so nervous and overthinking your mind goes blank or drifts off topic?
I know that, listen, it happens. And I think the best you could do is halt for a moment. There is an awkwardness sometimes in silence with a speaker, or if I just stopped for a second and went, let me think about that. It happens. It doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen a lot. If it happens to you, it's okay. And you just take a moment and know that you can breathe. You can stop. We have this constant need to feel that we have to fill space all the time, even when we're in small groups, depending on your personality. Extrovert, introvert, but some people feel they have to fill all the talking. But if you stop talking, you realize there's sort of like an inner peace for a moment. And if you stop talking, you listen. So even if you're the center of attention and you're on the podium, it's okay to say, just stop for a second. Look down for a second, look over, whatever you may feel. Take a deep breath. It's okay. That's how I deal with it.
That's good.
But it's difficult.
I just want to add, practice out loud to know where you're going to stumble and fix it. change the way you're saying something. And before you present, know how to pronounce all of the nouns, all of the names. I find it really offensive and disrespectful when people are introducing someone else or talking about someone else and they say, I just can't pronounce your last name. So, oh, just call her Emily, have her come up, and everybody claps. But I think that's awful to know who you're dealing with, pronounce their name and be respectful. And when I was a reporter, what I was always afraid of was the foreign countries and cities. I had to learn how to pronounce them well. So know how to pronounce and practice aloud.
That's great. I think we have time for one more question. One more, okay. How do we push past the distractions or a not engaged audience? Which is not the case today, but it might happen. And how about we tie that into final thoughts from all three of you? So all three of you maybe give an answer to that question and then your final thoughts, and we'll go from there.
Sure. I think sometimes if your audience is that stagnant, you know you've spoken too long. And there is a keynote speaker, and even when they ask me to be a keynote speaker, they say 20 minutes. I say, I won't speak for 20 minutes. I'll speak for 10. And even then, I can see, and maybe I have to say to myself, I need to be more engaging, because maybe I could speak for 20 minutes and if I was more engaging at times. But I feel 10 minutes works great, and I can get in significant message time in 10 minutes and have you walk away and say, I learned something, and have it be engaging. So, but if you still do not have an engaging audience, sometimes I will throw in a little comment or something to laugh. You know, is anybody listening? You know, anyway. And I know that's would probably come from the trainer as don't do that. But see, you have to say, you know, did everybody have their coffee this morning? You know, whatever it may be. Or I would say something, hey, I know politics is probably not the most interesting subject for all of you, you know, but I think that's my little ticket once in a while. But I'm very careful of not speaking on too heavy of a subject matter for too long to keep the audience engaged. And my only last tidbit for the day is be you again. Be you and have fun. Don't forget that you should have fun and enjoy and feel honored to be able to present something to someone else they can walk away learning from you. Have fun with it. And I think sometimes we forget to have fun on top of being helpful to others.
Thank you, Senator Brown.
I would go back to using props, using videos, engaging your audience. For example, the Pocono Mountains Visitors Bureau, we're organizing a Tourism Day Summit right now. So my topic is on storytelling. So my co-hosts and myself, we are doing some storytelling tips, and then we're breaking the group up into 3 different sections and having them they have their own storytelling scenarios and putting together a video that's crafted around a story. So getting your audience engaged and, you know, in some hands-on learning. The only thing I wanted to leave you with is for if you're maybe in the beginning of your public speaking journey, I was always into acting classes and my high school musical, so I was used to being in front of an audience. But when I first started, this was more than 10 years ago, in news, I had my first ever live shot, where if you watch the news, you're live, and then it rolls into a pre-taped segment, which we call a package that we put together, and at the end, we come back out live. I'm Brianna Strunk in Stroudsburg, back to you in the studio, and I was so nervous. It was my first time live on TV. I psyched myself out. When the story was rolling, the edited package, it was three sentences, and I was rehearsing it over and over and over again, and I didn't even realize that we were back out live, and I am live on air rehearsing the same 3 lines. And I was so mortified. I remember it so vividly. I went home, laid in bed, cried, called my mom. Everyone watching, I'm such an embarrassment, I'm such a failure. And I could have just given up there and said, this isn't for me, this isn't going to work for me, I'm not cut out for this. but I just learned from it and went on to the next thing and kept putting myself out there. Started with, I think my first speaking engagement, I scripted out the entire thing. It was in like a ballroom type setting with hundreds of people. It was really overwhelming, and I read off of a script, which I would never do today, but just practicing to get better over time. And if something happens where you stumble, you mess up, you forget what you're saying, just keep going, and next time it will get better as you continue practicing.
Thank you so much, Brianna. And Dr. Richard Service, you have about 35 seconds. So.
Go. Okay.
Sorry.
I'm blessed with panel participants who think like I do and have shared really wonderful information with you, so I just concur with them and everything that they've said so far. My last bit of advice, if you would allow me to call it that, is think about all of your speaking as an opportunity to clarify a message, take a breath, and say things the way you want them said. Are you speaking with clarity? Are you engaging people? If you have a message to share, are you delivering it with empathy, with humor, with whatever you want to do in that moment for what's right at that time? And if you want to get better at public speaking, take every opportunity to volunteer, whether it's teaching a CCD class or running a program at the library about a hobby that you have, sharing a recipe on YouTube, whatever it is. Take that opportunity and just continue to practice, and it's going to get easier over time.
Thank you so much, and thank you to the whole panel and the audience. I hope we all learned something. Thank you.